Where do you predict Shaduer and Travis going?
Hey, what's going on, guys? A little preview of what we're going to be dealing with today, man. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I didn't even open the chat for this video. I got a session at 5 o'clock, man, so I really got to be in and out. But I had to get in front of the GM audience, man, and talk about this Shador Sanders fall and how he landed in the AFC North. Now, I know you may be saying whether you catch it in the live or you catch it in the recording, but Lange, what does it matter? He's not a Raven. Well, everything that happens in the league will impact the Ravens, but if we never narrow it down, everything that happens in the AFC North impacts the Ravens. Everything that happens in the AFC directly impacts the Ravens. Any addition or any subtraction on any team in the North or in the AFC as a whole will have an impact on the Ravens. Now, this does not impact the Baltimore Ravens directly, but I want to speak to the idea that we've seen this before, right? Why did Shador Sanders fall? Well, let's set the stage. Coming into this offseason, a lot of people understood or believed that Shadur Sanders would be one of the top two quarterbacks taken off of the draft board, specifically in the first round. Whether he would go number one or whether he would go number two, but he was definitely going to be a top 32 pick, right? There was no question. And then all of a sudden, about 48 to 72 hours before draft night, you began to hear some chirping. You began to hear some talk concerning Shadur Sanders and how it was sports media who had been hyping him up and not organizations, not general managers, not scouts. And so you began to hear, man, he could fall out of the top 10. And then you began to hear, man, he could fall to Pittsburgh at number 21. He could be available. And then you began to hear as the draft day began to draw even closer, he could fall out of the first round. And then many people said, man, he'll be a great day two pick. But then day two came and went. And then it was, okay, what's going to happen going into day three? And the fourth round came and went. And then it was the fifth round. And the Cleveland Browns took him off the board, ending his agony. But the question is, why did this happen? Why did this fall happen? Was it the C word? Maybe. Was it a lack of talent? Not quite. But I think that it's a combination of several things that have nothing to do with what happens on the NFL field. Let me point you to something. I remember when Deion Sanders, prime time, that is, gave his speech at I believe it was his Hall of Fame induction. And I remember him telling the story about how he created Prime sort of like an ulterior ego, right? Sort of like a second person to himself, sort of like the embodiment of all the swag and all the pride and all of the attainment and all of the accomplishment, right? And a lot of times when we create that ulterior motive, we don't know when it's on or when it's off. And if you know anything about prime time Deion Sanders, it seems like prime time is always on, and we never get to see much of Dion. Give me 1 second while I get this video queued back up. You see, and so we've seen him over the course of some years come off as braggadocious, come off as a little bit obnoxious, but because he had been so great, maybe the greatest two-sport athlete in history, a lot of people kind of ignored it. Some overlooked it. But nevertheless, uh, He stayed relevant. He made commercials. He's made lots of money. I think he went to Jackson State, I believe, if I got the college correct, and began to coach. Then he bounced and went to Colorado. And since he got there, there's been some controversy about Dion and having a bad attitude and about being unapproachable and about how the players, some of the players don't really rock with him and so on and so forth. But I don't think it was about that either. I think this was about sending a message to prime time. I didn't say Deion Sanders. I said sending a message to prime time that we're divorcing ourselves from you. Who's divorcing themselves from prime time? The NFL. And maybe it's more like a legal separation. You see, because you guys have heard the commentary, just like I heard the commentary that that Shador only ever had one coach, and that was his daddy, right? And you guys heard the speculation that, hey, Jerry Jones may want to grab Deion Sanders and hire him as a coach. You also heard the speculation that, hey, whoever drafts Shador may want to pick up Deion too. I think that the league doesn't want that. Not really because Deion is a bad dude, but some aspects of Deion kind of says that he doesn't know how to keep that mouth closed, how not to overstep his boundaries. I don't mean overstep his boundaries like he doesn't have a place and space to speak. I mean uh telling other grown people what they are and aren't going to do. Let me give you an example. Let me see if I can
Where
let me
do
see if this
you
clip will play for me.
predict Shador and Travis going in the draft?
Top 4.
That's pretty beautiful.
Anywhere from 1 through 4. One of them is going to be 1.
That's what I'm talking about.
One of them is
Let's
going to be
speak it
1.
into existence.
And the latter one would not go behind 4. Now, all this is subjective because I know where I kind of want them to go.
Okay. So first and foremost, I don't know why my video is not playing, but this is a conversation Deion is having, kind of an interview, and the conversation is about, and I'm not sure even why the frame must be too big for uh, the the slot I have it put in. But nevertheless, the conversation is about where is Shador and Travis going. He says they're both gonna go top 4, right? And that's that's pretty good. You know what I'm saying? That's not too much. That's not too much to ask. You know why? Because that was the expectation. That was the talk all the way up to 48 to 72 hours that Shador specifically would go in that top 4 range, second quarterback off the board.
This is subjective
But let's keep
because
listening.
I know where I kind of want them to go. And let's not forget Shallow, okay? But I know where I want them to go. So there's certain cities that ain't gonna happen.
Okay, you on point.
It's gonna be it's not a, I'm sorry, it's gonna be an Eli.
We are.
Pause. Now, if you heard Prime at the very end, he said it's gonna be like an Eli, right? He says, I know where I want them to go. Some cities it ain't gonna happen. So what he does right then is communicate to the NFL that they don't have the right to make a selection unless he gives them permission to draft his players. That's exactly the message that he's given. See, that's not Deion Sanders talking. That's Prime. You see, it's kind of that ulterior ego that says that you call all the shots, whether you have a right to or you don't have a right to. And shout out to Dion for being a great father, for leading his son, for raising up 2 boys to play college ball. They're not in trouble. They're men. They're men, young men of God, so on and so forth. They operate on faith. All of those kind of things are things to celebrate. But I think that his outspokenness, his braggadocious nature contributed to his son's fall out of the first round and all the way to the 5th round. See, I believe that this was a coordinated effort. That's the C word I'm going to use. There's another C word, but I think this was a coordinated effort by 32 of 32 teams where they have an agreement that says, you know what? We have to make a statement and let Dion know, prime time know, that you know what? He's not welcomed here just yet. You see, because you can bet. Here's the scenario that played in 32 of 32 general managers' minds. Well, with the exception of the Baltimore Ravens, because we have our quarterback, and Cincinnati Bengals, so on and so forth. But I'm talking about any quarterback needy team or any team who could draft and stash Shaduer for the next little bit, right? But let's listen to
Expect
Shaduer,
this,
and I'll
of
pick up on this
course, but
conversation.
I feel like with God, anything possible, everything possible. I don't feel like this happened, for no reason. All this is of course, fuel to the fire. And under no circumstance, we all know this shouldn't happen. But we understand we're on the bigger and better things. Tomorrow's the day. We're going to be happy regardless. Legendary.
All right, we're gonna be happy regardless. Legendary. Well, yeah, you've lived a great life with your dad being a Hall of Famer, made lots of money, right? But there's not many other players who have walked in the footsteps of a Shador Sanders to where he didn't have to struggle. It was the NFL or it was nothing. The family couldn't get up out the gutter unless it was on the back of the talent of that particular kid. So he does come from a solid situation, and they're going to be good regardless. But he said we know it shouldn't have happened. Well, why did it happen? Right? Why did it happen? Why did it go down this way? Well, it went down this way, I believe, certainly as a message to Shador and Dion to say, you know what? Fall back. Old school term. Fall back. Stay in your place. The league is bigger than just you. Now, some people may try to pull the race card, whatever, however, but it ain't about race. However, Belanger, how do you know? Well, the number one pick was a black dude, right? The number two pick was a black dude. The number three pick was a black dude. So on and so forth. So it wasn't about race. This was about prime time being turned off. Meaning, if we draft Shadur, who is better than some of the other quarterbacks who was drafted before him, we can't have Dion talking from Colorado. See, here's the biggest difference. It's not just Twitter for Dion or prime time. It's not just Twitter. See, anybody can get on Twitter and post something, but Dion is going to have a 12-week national platform to do what? Talk about NFL ongoings as it pertains to his son. And all of the GMs understand that, right? Dion has a platform for 12 weeks of a college season, a live platform, not just Twitter, a live platform to campaign that, you know what? They need to give my son a chance. So think about it. They draft Shador and sit him for an example. Well, they're making a mistake, right? Think about if the team starts losing. Well, they should start Shador, right? No team wants to endure that. See, if you guys remember, let me give you a couple of examples, and then we're gonna get up out of here. If you remember when Lonzo Ball was getting ready to be drafted, he played, I think, at UCLA. And all you heard was LeVar Ball, LeVar Ball, LeVar Ball, LeVar Ball on Fox Sports, LeVar Ball on ESPN, LeVar Ball on Twitter. And people were tired of LeVar Ball. LeVar Ball was such a promoter of his son. And shout out to LeVar Ball, Alonzo, LaGello, and LaMelo, all who played professional ball. So congratulations, man, for a daddy to raise three boys to play professional ball. But he was such a promoter of Lonzo that he even got to the point and said, oh, yeah, he'd be better than Michael Jordan. And if you remember Lonzo Ball's first game, everybody who faced him was out to rough him up, not be dirty, but rough him up to prove a point that you just a dude. So fall in line. right? Think about it. You guys remember that. And we've seen a collective. We've seen a collective in the NFL before, to where there was a guy, quarterback, Baltimore, who was in free agency, had played out his rookie deal and his 5th-year option, and the team decided to put the transitional franchise tag on him and told him to go test his value. And you heard team after team after team after team say, "Nah, I'm good." Right? You heard the Carolina Panthers say, "Nah, I'm good." Since that time, they've won 15 games or less. Right? Think about what I'm saying. You heard the Atlanta Falcons say, "Nah, I'm good." But since that time, they're on their 2nd or 3rd quarterback. You heard the New York Jets say, "Nah, I'm good," and then go out and trade for Aaron Rodgers, and they ain't bust a grape since. You heard Tennessee Titans, who just drafted #1 overall, say, "Nah, I'm good." You heard multiple teams say, "Nah, I'm good," off of Lamar Jackson. And I had people come and tell me, "Well, that just means he wasn't that valuable." You sound like a fool if you said that to me. No, no, no. It was a 32 team collective. There is an understanding of billionaires who help each other collect checks throughout the year, that you know what? We can only give players so much power, so much authority. And when you have a spokesperson like Prime, who's going to be, excuse me for this alarm, when you have a spokesperson like Prime, who's going to be outspoken, who's going to be obnoxious in some kind of context, who's going to be rude, who's going to promote his son, they don't want that kind of publicity. See, there is no player who's come out in the draft in the last 15 years who has had a father, coach, and promoter like Shadour Sanders. See, if Shadour Sanders was Shadour Robertson, meaning his last name wasn't Sanders, he wasn't Deion's son, he had the same kind of skill set he had, he'd have been a 1st-round pick or a 2nd-round pick. But because Deion was his father, is his father, they had to turn that noise all the way down. And they had to tell him to fall back and get in line. Because it ain't one player nor one personality outside of the NFL that's bigger than the 32. That's what this was about. We've seen it with Lamar Jackson, and we've seen it in this situation right here. And we've seen it in other situations. We just didn't recognize what we were seeing. But let me tell you specifically. Let me show you specifically the evidence of why I say it was a collaborative effort. I got 10 minutes to tell you this. Let me play this last little bit of
You know, I've obviously known his father for a long time. My first time meeting him, and to be quite honest with you, we didn't talk a whole lot about my relationship with his father. It was a normal pre-draft visit to spend time with a young man, to talk ball, to get to know him as an individual, get to see how he processes and sees the game and how he articulates his football experience. From that standpoint, it was a very normal visit, a very productive one.
Did anything stand out in that meeting about him that maybe you didn't see coming or didn't know?
I think the things that stood out were evident in his video. There's a toughness there that doesn't get talked about enough. There's a competitive spirit there that doesn't get talked about enough. I know he's very talented and made a lot of plays for his university and his team, but the intangible qualities displayed on tape were impressive.
All right. And so we saw the great Mike Tomlin speak about a meeting with Shadour Sanders. Okay. Now, why would a head coach sit down and talk vividly about a meeting with a top 30 prospect visit? Because Shadour is a high profile player because of his father, or in addition with his father, right? But you heard Mike Tomlin through the door say, no, we didn't talk much about his father at all, right? See, he had to separate the player from the promoter, coach, father. Primetime had to separate that from the beginning. Then he talked about the intangibles. He talked about he has a level of toughness. He talked about talent, and then we all understand post the Mike Tomlin Steelers Shadour Sanders' visit, we talked about that there was some mutual interest, a level of mutual respect between the two entities, right? So what went wrong? See, because it can't be that Pittsburgh did not need a quarterback, because as of right now, the recording of this video, Aaron Rodgers has not signed. And even if Aaron Rodgers had signed, the dude's 100 years old. How long is he going to play? So getting a long-term cheap answer on day 2, at the bottom of day 1, or at the beginning of day 4, he was always on the table. It's not a fact that they didn't need a quarterback, because they actually drafted a quarterback, right? Think about what I'm saying. So how would it go from a mutual respect, intangibles, talent, good meeting, to crickets when it came to drafting him? Hmm? Hmm? How could it be? Watch this. Watch this. How could it be? Mike Tomlin says the meeting went good. All of the reports out of his pro day is that he had a good pro day. But then 48 to 72 hours before the draft, now he's going to fall out of the first round. Well, that would have been excellent for the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? And in truth, the Pittsburgh Steelers still need a quarterback, because the dude that they drafted is a project. You see, was Mike Tomlin in on it? Certainly not. It's above Mike Tomlin's pay grade. This is an ownership down to the GM decision, collective, collaborative, to suppress this dude's value and to turn down his dad. See, because imagine if a team drafts him. Oh, let me bless you. You see, imagine if the Steelers had drafted him, but then they're losing. What's the buzz? Somebody tell me, what's the buzz? The buzz is, oh, the Steelers need to reach out to Dion, Coach Prime, and see if they can get him to come and coach his son in Pittsburgh. It could have been that way for any other team, right? So really, this was a divorce from Dion. This was a divorce from Prime Time, to say, no, you're not ready to be here yet because you talk too much. See, coming to the league and coaching his son could be an option, but not right now. We need to have a separation for a while. You need to see right now up front that if you talk too much from that perch in Colorado, it's going to impact your son in a not so good way. That's what I think happened. So listen, man, you guys jump into the comment section, man, and let me know what you think. Do you think it was some type of collaborative? Or do you think that his value just fell because he's a 5th round level quarterback versus the 1st round talent that he was believed to be? I'm Miguel Boulanger. This is the GM, and I'm out.